Yes, it's John G. Sutton here. Tales from the Jails. Yeah, thanks very much for watching this. And don't forget, on the 7th of November, there's a big interview with myself and Sean Atwood on his True Crime channel. So do have a look at that. And that's followed about half an hour after that finishes with a live Q&A with myself and Sean. And we'll be on there discussing matters pertaining to what took place in the interview. So you can ask all the questions you want there. Now, I want to talk today a little bit about punishments that are administered in prison. I mean, it's the governor, when he's adjudicating, has a certain limitations that he can award. He can award 7 days loss of remission. So let's say you get involved in a prisoner gets involved in a fracas, in a fight, something like that, gets stuck up before the governor. He can get a sentence something like 7 days non-associated labour. That means down the block. And he could lose 7 days remission. So if you were going to get, say you were doing 6 months, you're going to get out after 3 months, you get out after 3 months and a week, yeah. So that's what had happened. But the governor's powers are very limited. If it's anything more serious than that, let's say in the fracas, in the fight that you've been involved in, or the prisoner's been involved in, somebody is seriously injured, then it is pretty well automatically referred to the police, and the inmate is charged and presented before the courts, and the courts will deal with them as they see fit, as it's most appropriate. The problem that you have, of course, with that is that somebody who's serving something like life times 3 times life, and they've got a whole life tariff. I mean, what can the courts award them? Take somebody up who's doing a whole life tariff and stick them before the magistrates or the Crown Court. What are they going to award them? Oh, we'll give you an extra life sentence on top of that. Yeah, but I'm already serving an indefinite period, So the courts are pretty well powerless. And the prisons, I mean, what usually happens in instances like that is that the inmate gets what I would call buggered about. That's shipped. Let's say the incident takes place at Strangeways. And of course, you're going to be committed for trial at the Crown Court for grievous bodily harm, whatever it is you've done. But you'll get shipped. You might get shipped to Parkhurst. You could get shipped to Wandsworth or Wormwood Scrubs. And you get on what's known as the ghost train. You're shipped about all around the country. And it's very disconcerting because you can't effectively set up visits with your loved ones because you're always on the move, yeah? So that would be the kind of thing that would happen if in prison you're involved in a serious incident that would amount to a serious criminal offence. I mean, minor offences like refusing direct orders. When I was at Strangeways, one of the things that they didn't allow was inmates smoking on the landings or smoking in the recess, the toilets. And you'd give them a direct order and tell them, listen, put that out and get out. And fair enough, if they did it, that's it. You wouldn't really do anything else, would you? I mean, you'd sorted that out. You didn't need to actually put it any further. But if they told you to piss off or words to that effect, then it's up to you to actually deal with it. And what you would do is you could put them on what's known as like a report, yeah? So you give them, serve them with a document, to say that you've been charged with disobedience of prison regulations and you refused a direct order to do what you were told. And then the next day they go before the governor and the officer goes in and gives the evidence. and the inmate is entitled to ask questions and make a defence. But generally speaking, if the officer said that you'd been doing this, that and the other, then that is what the governor would accept, and the inmate would be awarded perhaps loss of privileges, restricted go down the block or something like that. Because when you get down the block, you really haven't got a great deal of choice there but to conform. You see, down the block, it's one of the last stops. It isn't the last stop, but if you get yourself put down the block for infringement of prison regulations, then you're going to meet the likes of Bootsy and the Chinese monkey puzzle, or whatever it called. His name was Chinese Money Box. Yeah, that was him. Piggy, you'd meet Piggy, and they also meet the Black Dog. Yeah, these are the nicknames that the staff had. But they earned them by being extremely unpleasant towards their charges, and always down the block it was the silent treatment, so nobody spoke to you. Yeah, you weren't allowed to speak to other inmates on the block. You weren't allowed to speak to staff because staff wouldn't speak to you, and if you did try and start being a little bit clever, then what usually happened was you'd get introduced to a face-to-face interview with Bootsy or one of the boys, or two of the boys. How many of they took didn't matter, because they got plenty. Yeah, I worked down the block a little bit myself, but I tried to avoid the confrontations and ask for deliberately antagonising inmates. I didn't see any. There was no plus side to that. All that you were going to get was the inmates would get extremely anxious, and they're likely to. Any inmates who's anxious and upset is more likely to attack and hurt you than an inmate who isn't. So I didn't like it down the block because you were not allowed to interact with the inmates because the senior staff wouldn't have it. And of course, as I previously said, I was down the block one and I saw this great big fat jailer, big fat ugly bastard, made me look pretty. So you can imagine how ugly that was then. Yeah, seriously, got this big tureen of soup, put it on the floor, unzipped, out with the plonker, and pissed in the soup. I said to him, "What on earth is this all about?" He said, "That'll teach the bastards." I said, "What's he going to teach him?" I said, "They don't even know you've done it." I said, "All they're going to do is take the soup." I said, "And who's it going to benefit?" So I mentioned it to the senior officer who was in charge of the segregation unit. And, you'd think he might say, "Really, did he do that? I'll have a word with him." No, he didn't. He said, "You get about your duties." That's what he said to me. Get about my duties, Oh, well, that's the way it was. Punishment in the prisons. But, it's not as bad as it used to be. Go back to the 1950s, 1960s. They had things like bread and water. Seriously, it's bread and water. You got a pound of bread, a loaf of bread that weighed 1 pound, and you got jugs of water, as much water as you wanted, I believe. Yeah, and because it wasn't operating when I was there, but it used to be. And there's a certain hangover from that. Some of the staff applied their own form of punishment and discipline, and that they wouldn't unlock people for meals, so that they would be effectively on a food-free diet. And I'd seen senior officers saying to me, "Don't unlock him at lunchtime." So, well, he's entitled to his meal. Listen, don't unlock him at lunchtime. He's on a food-free diet. That's what they do. And the idea was that the inmate who was getting no food would start banging on his door. Well, that was the idea. That's what they want, you see. then they turn up with about 4 or 5 staff, door open, snatch them, and the way they ran them down the thing, they pick them up off the floor, an officer on one arm, one leg, 4 of them, and run them off the landing down to D1, stick them in a strip cell, because there's nothing in the cell, rip all the clothes off them. I've previously mentioned this. It's quite a brutal thing, you know. But if we go back to the 50s and 60s, they had another thing they used to have. You could get whipped. You could be sentenced by the governor to be flogged. Seriously. Mad Frankie Fraser was flogged twice during his terms of imprisonment, usually for attacking staff, always from behind, never face to face. So Mad Frankie Fraser would do that. I saw his record. His record didn't come in an ordinary folder. It came in a big cardboard box. And there were pictures in there of Frankie Fraser when he was like 17 and what have you, been in prison for housebreaking in London. He was a scumbag, you know. When the blackout came, when the Blitz was on, he used to go around robbing houses in the Blitz. Said it was the best time he ever had because nobody could see him because all the lights were out, no street lights, nothing. And he'd break into their houses and the soldiers were away fighting the Germans while Mad Frankie Fraser was robbing their houses with the wife and children inside. So don't tell me that Frankie Fraser's a hero. I've met him. He's a shithouse. Oh, he was. He's a dead shithouse now. Stoking the fires of hell. Anyway, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this little talk about punishment in the prisons. I'm going to now give you some punishment. Yes, it's that song ding a time, but I ain't going to sing no ding ding song. I'm going to read you one of my poems. People say they like the poems. I just been writing poems since I was about 9. Seriously, God's honest truth this. I wrote one poem, about half a dozen poems, and I thought these are ideal for, what's his name? Yeah, Max Bygraves, yeah? He was a big star at the time. He had things like, when it's spring again, I'll bring again tulips from Amsterdam. Yeah, he had that hit, you know, and I thought, poems might be good for his stage act, you know, so I sent him half a dozen of my poems. I'd be about 13, I think, at the time. Sent it off, and I never thought note about it. You know, I never heard anything back for months and months and months. And by that time, she completely slipped my mind. And I came home one day from school, and my mother said to me, what have you been writing to? I said, I haven't been writing to anybody because I've forgotten about it by this time. She said, oh, yes, you have. I've got a letter here. I said, oh, a letter. Who's it from? She said, it's from a man called Max Bygraves, and it says here, when she read this letter out, it was horrible. It said things like, I have read what you've sent me. I consider you to be psychologically disturbed, seriously ill. I think you need treatment. Words to that effect. Me, seriously disturbed. Yeah? Max Bygraves. She said, I'm going to show this to your dad. So anyway, when my father came home from work, he said, I want you to tell me exactly what you sent to Max Bygraves. I said, well, it was only some of my poems. I thought they might be good in his act. He said, read me one of your poems. So the poem I sent him was, one of them was, crash bash thump on a hunchback's hump, morning, noon and night thump thump. But it's over for now, for me, I think. You see, they've thrown me in the clink, but I'll clear the wall with a mighty jump, and I'll get back to my hunchback's hump, morning, noon and night bump bump. But I was only 12 or 13, you know. I mean, it just seemed to me a bit funny, you know. And my dad didn't find it amusing, and Max Bygraves said I was psychologically in need of help. Anyway, they burnt the letter. It's a pity, really, because it would have been on my wall now, framed on my wall. Max Bygraves said I was Seriously Disturbed. And as a tribute to this, it's in my mind, you see, I released a CD, about 5 years ago now. It's called Seriously Disturbed. Yeah, seriously called Seriously Disturbed. It's got a load of songs on it, mad songs like The Farting Werewolf. Oh, The Farting Werewolf, actually, it's on YouTube. You look it up, The Farting Werewolf, Two Hat John with the clap. And that's a song about a woman who has terrible nightmares, and during the nightmares, yeah, she is extremely flatulent because she's been drinking and eating curry and all that, and she blames this vision in her dream of a werewolf. She has a dream of a werewolf. She blames the werewolf for the flatulence, you see. But obviously it's not the werewolf, it's her, yeah? And in the end, she actually shits the bed. It's one of them kind of seriously disturbed songs. Hey, maybe Max Bygraves was right. Anyway, I'm going to read you one of my poems now. Yeah. This is called Funny Girl. It just came to me as an idea, what would happen if you went out and you picked up a transvestite and you thought it was a lady. And when you got back to your place, what would happen? This is it, Funny Girl by John G. Sutton. I met Ruth in a boozer one enchanted night. Too many pints of bitter, feeling very tight. Took her back to my place, could hardly find the door. Staggered round the living room, hewed on the floor. She said it was disgusting when I exposed my pedenda, and need me in the ghoulies when I tried to table end her. I offered her some curry, last night's takeaway. It was just a little crusty, but really quite okay. The lady, not amused, had another idea. She asked me to undress and pointed to my rear. No, my head was really spinning, the effect of too much booze, but I thought, what the hell, I've got nothing to lose. Minus my shreddies, she pulled me to bed, turned me over and gripped me by the head. She was a powerful woman. She filled me with fear, and her honeymoon equipment was decidedly queer. Next morning she had vanished into the noonday sun. Lipstick on the mirror said, "You're a bum." Now all I have are memories, nightmares to tell the truth, of a night on the tiles with a funny girl called Ruth. There, you suffered through that. Don't forget, have a look at my book. I'll put a link here. It's doing well, actually. I got some nice reviews. Tales from the Jails. Peace and love.